Welcome to another Digital Photo Mentor video. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you why Luminar 4 is going to rock your world if you are a portrait and people photographer. Stay tuned and I'll show you how it can speed up your workflow and do an even better job faster than Lightroom. Let's take a look. First thing I'd like to mention is that I am using a Luminar 4. If you have an older version like Luminar 3 or 2018 or even Flex, those do not have the portrait module and the portrait AI tools. So if you want to take advantage of these things, you're going to want to upgrade to Luminar 4. So let's take a look at what it does. I've picked a couple of images to show you as an example of single portraits. Okay, so this first one here, I've already done the work in Luminar on this portrait. So I want to show you the before and after and show you what I was able to do with only a few slider adjustments, and there is no brush work done here. Okay, so here's the before, and you can see that her skin has quite a bit of blemishes and she's got a lot of shine on her face. It was a very hot day. And this is the after. Okay, so I've done some work on the background to bring out the detail and also in her hair as well. But what I'm looking at mostly is her face and the amount of retouching that has been done on her face, and I haven't touched a brush. Okay, that is all done in these two sections of the Luminar portrait module. Okay, so this is new if you're new to Luminar 4. You go into the little smiley face tab here, which is portrait. Okay. And the first one is the skin enhancer. So what this one does is allows you to remove shine now. This is new in Luminar 4.2. And I'm very excited about that one, okay? Because the shine is something that's really hard to remove in Lightroom and even in Photoshop. You have to do a lot of brush work and cloning to remove shiny face. The second one is the amount of skin smoothing, and I'm going to take this one all the way up to 100 just to show you what it does and the fact that it keeps the integrity of the face and you don't lose the detail and seeing the pores. Because one of the things that I don't like about some other automated portrait editing programs is that they go too far and you end up with plastic skin. But take a look here. This is at 100%. You can still see her pores, and if I zoomed in even more, you'd actually be able to see that the still fine hairs of her face. Right? Now, I'm probably not ever going to use this slider at 100%, but I've taken it all the way just to show you what a good job it does. Right? The shine removal is toning down those light areas on her face where she had some oiliness, okay? And the skin defects removal tick box is literally just that, and it's removing all of those blemishes without a single retouch or cloning. I'm not doing any cloning. Oh, it's missed a couple. I could probably do a little bit better on her cheek and this little one over here, okay? And Luminar does have a cloning tool, healing tool that can allow you to pick up any that it's missed, okay? So I'm actually going to slide this one back down to about, let's go about 70%, so that it's not smoothing quite so much. And then let's take a look at the other tools, the portrait enhancer tools. Okay, so this is the next panel down, right? And I've already applied some of these things so I can show you what they are doing as a before and after here. Okay, so there's lots of sliders, as you can see. Face light literally lightens the face, and I'll show you how amazing that is on a group portrait in a second. Okay, teeth whitening, eye whitening, and I've taken this one sort of medium. I'm about 30 on most of the sliders that I've applied. I'm going to go really far with the teeth whitening just to show you that it doesn't actually go too overboard. Again, you want to kind of make sure that you don't end up with zombie looking people with super white eyes and super white teeth. And even if I take the eye whitening and the teeth whitening all the way, look, it still looks pretty natural. Let's look at the before and after again. Okay, so there's the before and the after. Right? Notice that her eyes are also becoming a little bit larger, and that's the Enlarged Eye Slider. Something I never thought I would use, okay? But she's got kind of squinty, she's squinting a little bit because the light was really bright, and her eyes are fairly narrow. So just by bringing that up to, I'm at 17 on this slider, it's just opening her eyes a little bit, okay? So it just looks like it's taken away that squint. So if you've got somebody that squints a lot, I'm just going to bring these back down where I had them. If you've got somebody that squints a lot or even has a lazy eye, that will actually help to open their eye a little bit, and it looks pretty natural, okay? There's also a slim face slider, which I don't use a whole lot, and I'm not going to demonstrate this one today, but it actually does a fairly nice job. I'll go halfway so you can see what it does. Okay, so it literally is like liquefy. If you're used to Photoshop, you can see that it's narrowing her face. Okay, give it a second to catch up. Okay, so see how her face is fairly wide and round? Mine is as well, and it's just narrowing her face a little bit. Okay, so it's done a really natural job of all of these things. I'm probably not going to slim her face, or if I do, I'm going to keep it much more subtle. Okay, so all of these things, it also has red eye removal, eye enhancer, which sharpens the eyes and brings out the detail in the eyes. It brings out the iris. So a lot of these things I used to do in Lightroom with an adjustment brush on each single thing. I would use one adjustment brush for the teeth, one for the eyes, one for the eyebrows, one for the irises again to brighten up the color, and then a whole different one to soften the skin. And then I'd have to go in with the cloning tool and get rid of all of the blemishes. So something like this in Lightroom, bring the eye whitening down. Always look at your image zoomed in and zoomed out. Okay, so make sure that you're not going too far, because once I zoomed out, the eyes looked too white. Okay, all of this, if I was doing this in the Lightroom, would take me about 15 minutes. Okay, so, and I can give you, I'll show you a video where I do those things in Lightroom so that you could see the comparison, because it does take that long. Okay, now I've taken about, 2 or 3 minutes to do this in Luminar, but in reality, it would probably take me even less than that, because guess what I can do? I can create a look which is similar to a preset in Lightroom. Okay, so I'm going to turn on the looks, and I've already saved this one. Okay, but if you want to, I'll just show you another example. Okay, if you want to save a look, what it's going to do is going to save all the settings that I've done on this picture. Okay, so if you've done exposure adjustments or anything like that, it's going to save that as well. Okay, so I'm going to do save new look. So I turned that on with a little button up here, and then save new look, and I'm just going to call it single portrait example. Okay, and it's going to save that down below under my user Luminar looks. Okay, so these are ones that I have made myself, and if you can't find them, they're down at the bottom here. Okay, so user Luminar looks. Okay, if you're using an older version of Luminar, again, they may be called presets. They're now called looks. Okay, so now I've saved that. Okay, I've also saved it previously. I am going to view some of my other images. So I have another single portrait that I want to apply this to. Okay, so this is the original image. I haven't done anything to this image. Okay, you can see here, it's totally nothing is done on it. How do I know? Because in Luminar, it actually gives you a little tip. Anything that I've applied effects to, it is lighter. So you'll see it highlighted. Okay, so I see nothing highlighted here, meaning I haven't done anything. Okay, so I'm going to click on the single portrait, okay, and wait for it to apply. Okay, and it does it pretty quickly. You can see there's a little processing note, and there it is. Okay, so let me just turn off some of these things so you can see it. Okay, now let's look at the before and after. Okay, before, after. Now this one is not as extreme as the first one. She hasn't got the same amount of blemishes on her skin, but look what it is doing. Okay, it's doing a really nice job. Let me just back that off a little bit. It's done a really nice job on her skin again. Okay, there is a couple of blemishes. Look to her forehead. Okay, see there's a blemish and a couple of things here, a couple of things under her eye. Okay, so it's done a really nice job on that and on the shine. Okay, now notice her nose is sort of disappearing here. So the beautiful thing about using these looks is that they're fully editable. Okay, it's all non-destructive. So on this case, I'm going to actually bring the shine removal slider down because she doesn't have very much shine on her face, and it should bring that highlight on her nose back. Okay, you see that? Let's just come back. Now if I've decided that the skin enhancer is going too far, I can bring that one down as well. But let's take a look at 100%, and you should be able to see all the detail of her face. Okay, look at that. You can see tiny little hairs. Look at the detail in her hair. It's not being touched. So it analyzes, it knows where the face is, and does all these things for you automatically. It's pretty amazing. Okay, I've now also, one thing I forgot to mention here, is an extra tool that comes in the portrait panel called the Orton effect. Back in the day when I used to shoot film, and I used a medium format camera, I would put a soft focus filter on the lens a lot of times, especially when photographing women. The issue with today's cameras is that we've gotten so incredibly good at making cameras with high resolution and detail that it's actually not that flattering for people. Okay, so a little bit of softening is a good thing. So what the Orton effect does is it adds an overall softening. It's an old-time effect. A fellow named Orton created it, where he shot two slides. One was in focus and one was out of focus, and he would actually sandwich them together to give it this sort of glowy look. So let me turn this filter off just so that you can see what it's doing. So you see it's just adding an ever so slight softening overall to the whole picture. Okay, if I turn it up, you can see what it's doing. Okay, so it's giving her this really glowy effect, and it has some parameters that you can control in terms of softness, brightness, lowering the saturation, and so on. So what I did for the preset was I left it at about 10, which is very, very subtle. Okay, I could turn it up a little bit more if I want more softening on this one. And it's really nice on especially single portraits and especially females. Okay, so it gives you a nice sort of glow of the whole image, not just the skin. Okay, so let's do another before and after. Okay. Something else I want to show you under the Essentials panel, which is the first one at the top, the sun, is the structure, AI Enhance and AI Structure. So I've actually set both of these to about plus 32, plus 33 as part of the preset that I worked on the first image. Now what these are doing, it's not going to show me in this image because I've got a plain background, so let me grab another one. So what it is doing is actually decreasing the background detail. So let's apply this again to another image, and you'll see how easily it works on all kinds of different images. Okay? So I'm going to do single portrait again, apply the look, and then let's come in closer to have a look and see what it's doing. Now this one is a really interesting one to use because she had a lot of shine on her face. She's in the bright sun. Right? So let's do before and after. So you can see that her skin is very shiny, so it's taken away a lot of that. Right? Maybe I want to dial that down a little bit. Right? Again, totally adjustable. Everything is non-destructive. It's also removed this little mole on her nose. Okay, so I want to show you that you can actually mask that. So if you're going along and you want to keep that defects removal on because she's got blemishes, but you don't want it to remove this mole on her nose, you can actually mask that. Okay, so I can create a little mask and I can brush the effect in or out. Okay, so in this case, I'm going to brush it out because I know it's right about here on her nose. Hopefully I got it. There it is. Okay, so I've literally just brushed it back in. So what I'm doing is I'm erasing that effect on that spot. Okay. So now let's take another look at the before and after. Okay. Still leaving her little mole or her beauty mark. Okay. I did the same image in Lightroom, and because of her forehead, it was sort of bumpy. It looked like some blemishes or maybe a scar or something, and the sun was highlighting it, plus all that shine on her face. It took me quite a lot of work to remove all of that, and as you can see, I did that by applying the preset with one click, and then I did a quick mask on her mole, and that's it. So that took me less than a minute, right, to complete this one. So the presets work really well on obviously single images, as do the portrait tools. So something that was criticized with Luminar's portrait tools early on was that it didn't work with group portraits. So let's take a look at a couple of group portraits and see how well it works for those. Okay, I could apply it on this image as well, but I want to show you some group pictures. So what I've done is, again, I've pre-edited this picture for you to show you a before and after, and I've created another look for this one. So I've saved it as a look. Let me get my looks back up here, called Group Portrait. This one I believe is number 2. Okay, so I've saved 3 different group portrait presets already, or looks, based on different criteria. So let's take a look at the before and after of this one. Okay, so this was shot outdoors. The background is very bright, and I had used flash. Okay, you can see it reflecting in his glasses, but they were still a little bit dark. Okay, so I've darkened the edge with a vignette. I've toned down some of the highlights and so on. But the beautiful thing that's happening here is the automatic stuff into the AI portrait filters. Okay, the one that I'm particularly excited about is this one here called Face Light. Okay, so what Face Light does, I'm going to turn it up to 100 just so you can see what it's doing, is it literally finds the shape of the face and lightens like in a circle. Okay, so you can see what it's doing there. Okay, so that's obviously taking it too far because they look like they're wearing ghost makeup, right? So that's going too far. But often what I used to do in Lightroom is I would do that to a smaller degree with the adjustment brush on every single face and every single group portrait. And if you're doing a lot of similar poses like this, like I shot several pictures of this grouping and several pictures of other groupings of this wedding that I did, this my cousin's wedding, I had to do that on every single one. So yes, you can copy and paste your settings and sync them in Lightroom, but if the people moved at all, and if you shot handheld, which I did, they're not going to be perfectly aligned in each frame. So their faces are not in the same place. So when you're doing that in Lightroom, you can copy and paste the settings, and then you have to go and redo the brush on every single one. So it's very time consuming to apply the first time, and then you still have to tweak it on every single one. Okay, so what I've done on this one is made group portrait number 2 preset. Right, so I'm going to show you on the next image, which is the same grouping that's unedited. Okay, so this is straight from the camera as it came, and I'm going to click that group portrait preset and wait for it to process, and there it is. Okay, now you can see the faces are lit. Again, I've not touched a brush. It was a one click. Okay, I could also do copy and paste like you do in Lightroom. Okay, so I can right click it, choose adjustments, copy, go to the next image, and you can do this on multiple images as well. Okay, I can go paste on here. Okay, it's going to apply, take a second to process, and boom, there it is. And from there, I might want to tweak it a little bit, you know, if I want to increase the brightness of the image overall, but it looks pretty good to me, right? So I've done no brush work, just copy and paste. That's it. Okay. Now what happens if I have a totally different grouping? So now these aren't even the same number of faces. Let's see what happens if I apply the same look or preset to a totally different grouping. Okay, so the background is really bright. Their faces are a little bit on the dark side. Okay, boom, beautiful. This is one I'm going to show you what's happening here with the structure. Okay, so what AI structure does is you can go to the plus side and it increases structure, but it does it in a smart way. It actually knows where the faces are because it's doing that facial analysis, and it does not increase structure. So structure would be things like increased contrast and clarity, like a clarity slider in Lightroom. Okay, so I'm going to come in just a little bit closer, and let's see what happens if we take the structure, AI structure, all the way or far to the right. Okay, so I'm increasing the structure. Okay, it's looking at the background in particular. Okay, so look what it does to the background, but it hasn't done too much on their faces. Okay, so it keeps that structure off the faces. If I go the other way, you're going to get negative structure, which is like a negative clarity. Okay, but it's much smarter than clarity in Lightroom. I don't have to take it off of their faces because it's not applying it as liberally as it is to the background. Okay, so where I had this was actually minus clarity a little bit, and it softens the faces really nicely. I think I was at minus 30. Let's go back there. And let's come in a little bit closer. Okay, so what it does is it softens the faces a little bit and the background even more. So let's take a look at it before and after of the whole image. You can see that the faces are being lit with that face light and softened a little bit. Look at the eyes are even being opened a little bit. He's got very kind of squinty little eyes. Okay. So I want to make sure you can see his eyes. Their teeth are being whitened. But this structure, let me just turn this one off and on. There's a little toggle over here, like a little light switch. So when I turn that one off, you see what it's doing to the background, and look at what it's doing to the faces. So just adding a little bit sort of minus clarity. It's making sure that the faces aren't getting any extra sharpness. Okay? So let's go back with our film strip, and I'm just going view and hide over here so you can see my film strip. And I can do the same thing. I can apply it to the next one. Okay. I just click group portrait, the one that I had pre-saved, and there it is. Okay, so all of those settings that I had done before, okay, are applied. Now one other one that I might want to tweak, and I don't know if I would want to save this as a preset, right? But the background is really bright, okay, because the yellow leaves, she wanted that in the background, but I want to make sure that they are the focal point of the image. So I don't want the leaves to be too bright. So under the little color panel here, so this is in the Essentials panel under color, you can go into different colors and adjust them separately. So this would be similar to your hue and saturation or your HSL panel in Lightroom, okay? So I'm going to go to yellow, and watch what happens if I dial the luminance down. Okay, so it's really affecting those trees. Notice how it's not affecting them at all. And I find that if I do that in Lightroom, there's a lot of yellow tone in the skin, and they end up being black and white. So it's also smart enough to know that I don't want to darken the people. I just want to darken the background a little bit. And maybe I want to bring the saturation of the leaves down, or I want to bring it up, right? So you get to decide. Right? I can also shift the color. It's a little bit wacky, right? So I can pre-save that as well if I want to update any of these portraits. So let's say I want this one to have this new minus yellow, darkening the yellow a little bit, applied in the preset. So anyone that I've already created previously, if I right click on it, right? You can delete it, rename it, and so on. You can even export it and share it with a friend, right? I will update with the current settings. Okay, so it's going to warn me, yes, I want to overwrite it. So now I might want to rename this one because I've also changed what it's doing. So just to remind myself, I might go darken yellows, okay, so that I know that one is going to darken any of the yellow tones in my image. So let's apply it to another group portrait, okay? So I've saved another preset called Large Group Portrait, and pretty much I've done mostly the same thing, but what I've done is less of the overall softening. Okay, so I tend to do more of the Orton effect, more of the softening on images where the people are larger in the frame, more faces, and less of that when it's a group portrait like this. Okay, so all I've done here, let's find the Orton effect, is I've dialed it almost down to 0. Okay, so it's down to 5. But what I have done is that color correction that we just talked about. So notice how the trees have gotten quite dark here. So I think I've gone a little too far. Let's bring that back a little bit. And let's check on the face lighting as well. So now if I want to update my look, remember, I can bring that back. Okay, so before, after. So it's done a really nice job. I've got an edge vignette on as well. Okay, so it's done a really nice job. I'm just going to update this one, okay, with the current settings. And on, away we go. Okay, and the face lighting. Okay, so face lighting here is at plus 35. Now, something that I want to adjust here is there's a couple of people that are in the sun. This fellow on the left and this fellow in the background and this lady. So edit the mask, and you can do it with a gradient mask, radial mask, or a brush. I'm going to use a brush. And Luminar makes it simple. So if you're relatively new to Photoshop and masking and all of those kinds of terms, you always have to remember in Photoshop whether you're supposed to paint with black or white, and white reveals, black conceals, or you always have to remember that, and it can get really confusing. So with Luminar, they make it easy, right? It just paint or erase. It doesn't get any harder than that. Okay, so I am going to erase this effect. Okay, so this is the portrait lighting and enhancer from this fellow's face. I'll make my brush a little smaller. I'm using the square bracket key, the left one. Okay, and I'm just going to remove that from his face, and maybe from his face, and maybe from her face. Okay, so I'm doing ever so slightly the adjustment on just those faces. Okay. And when I'm happy with that, okay, I will just say done. So let's look at the before and after again. And that was all mostly done with the preset. Okay, so if I had to go in and paint every single one of those little faces, that's a lot of work. Okay, because if I go ahead and go to the next one, so remember I can copy and paste, or I can just use that preset. Okay, so I've got the large group portrait preset, pre-saved. Click it. Processing. And there it is. Okay. Also, any of these looks can be dialed down. Okay, so you can dial them down so the overall amount of the preset. Okay. Just like that. Okay, same thing applies. Now let's see what happens if we have a completely different group. Okay, so this preset was, or look, I keep calling them presets. Okay, this look was created using the other arrangement of people, but let's see how it applies with this one. Processing. Okay, and there it is. So once again, it's done a really nice job of finding the faces. Particularly, look at the bride and the groom here. Okay, so their face was dark originally, and now it's done a really nice job. And it's also darkened those yellows. Okay, so remember we had the dark and the yellow. Same thing is applied here. Okay. So far I've been applying the presets one at a time, but let's say I've got a whole bunch like I do here that are all the same. Okay, so I can do the copy and paste, copy adjustments, or I can select them all. So I've just held my shift key and selected the top one, and I can say adjustments, sync. Okay, so now it's going to apply them to all of them. You can see it going through the thumbnails. So you can see that it is applied to all of the images, right? There's the before on this one and the after. So I'm applying the vignette and the color to darken all that yellow in the background. So let me just show you all of them. So it is applied to all of those group pictures, the same preset, even though they're in different places, they're in a different arrangement. You can see that the bride and groom are over here, right? And then we got a closer up one, and then we got them over here, and even these ones in profile. Okay, so let's take a look at this one, for example, and let's look at the before and after on that one. Sorry, I just keep turning off these views so you can see the image bigger. So what I'm clicking there is the looks button, and under the view menu, view hide film strip. Okay. So this one, notice that they're now on the other side of the picture and they're in profile. So even though the bride and the groom are in profile, it still recognized their faces. Okay. See how her face is being lightened as well as his. Okay. And the little boy that's looking down. So it does a really good job of finding faces, even small ones, even profile ones, different size faces, and whether or not they're in the same position. So if you are not convinced yet, I don't know what else I can say to convince you. I know that if I was still shooting weddings, which I am not anymore, I would be jumping on the bandwagon real fast in order to do this, because normally I would take about 5 to 15 minutes per image, and using the AI tools in Luminar, I could probably cut that down to a minute or less for every single image. So if you do a lot of portrait editing and you want to speed up your workflow, take a look at Luminar 4. I'll put some links below the video for you so that you can download a free trial and check it out for yourself. If you've tried it, let me know what you think. Until next time, take care, be safe, see you soon.